Chapter 1, A Hanged Ghost, Part 1. Go quickly, go quickly. After being poked in the back by a hard object, Song Jingyan turned around and faced a pale face. Who? The man standing behind Song Jingyan was holding a whip. It was he who poked her with the handle of the whip just now. It didn't hurt or itch, but his face was very pale, with bloody lips and chaotic eyes, like a puppet that had lost its soul. The man lazily raised the whip in his hand and hit Song Jingyan gently. Even his voice was soft and soft, unlike a tough man. Just leave if I tell you to. Even if you die and don't fear pain, you don't have to force me to beat you. Song Jingyan was just about to complain about the whip that fell on her body as lightly as a feather, but the next moment her eyes widened and her hair exploded. Who is dead? What is dead? The white-faced man ignored her and urged the long team to continue on their way. While gently stroking the sparse team with his soft little whip, he softly murmured like he was selling some new gadget. Don't look around when you get to the Sun-to River later. If you get carried away and forget about your past, don't blame me for not reminding you one person per person, one boat. No need to grab it. Song Jingyan was really frightened. How could she be playing online games on the computer one second, and then inexplicably go on a day trip to Sun-to River the next? Has she signed up? Wrong. Is she really dead? The soft-faced man still looked lazy. He looked at Song Jingyan, who was at the end of the team, and gestured with the little leather whip in his hand. Let's go. If you can't catch up with this fleet later, you'll have to build a bed on the bank of the Sun-to River. There may be many people tomorrow, and you won't be able to get on the boat. This team was loose and loose, with about 10 people in strange clothes. There were elegant young men wearing long gowns, some down-and-out beggars, and even a fat man with a big belly in the Qing Dynasty official uniform hanging at the front. This really made Song Jingyan dumbfounded, and she swallowed hard. She raised her feet and saw that the roughly 2-meter-long bluestone road was extremely uneven. Her front feet stepped on a small slope and her back feet sank into a small pit. The sound of rushing water came from a distance, more like the roar of a waterfall, but it did not come from beside or above, but from under the bluestone slab. Her feet were still shaking slightly, and the rushing water seemed to break through the restraints and roll up, making her whole body feel numb from the tremor. The white-faced man stopped urging her, as if he was just waiting for her to fend for herself. He slowly turned around and shook the whip in his hand, drifting forward like a paper figure. Etc. She didn't want to be left alone in this inexplicable place. Song Jingyan finally quickened her pace to keep up with the formationless team in front of her. She looked around and saw that it was all gray and gray. Maybe it was because of her thick nerves. The only problem for her was that the ghostly bluestone road was uneven and difficult to walk on. She didn't feel the slightest fear at all. She is not wearing the little yellow chicken nightgown she put on after taking a shower. The silky soft material feels very good to the touch. It has 3 layers inside and 3 outside. The pink skirt is pink and lovely, just like the Hanfu in the TV series. The ship is coming come here one by one. Song Jingyan was filled with resentment as she stumbled forward on the bluestone road full of obstacles. When she heard a boat coming, she immediately became excited. She looked up, and before she could see the boat, a large piece of blood-red color crashed into her sight. Red, lifeless red. Large tracts of red flowers bloom enchantingly on the shore, spreading out in layers as far as the eye can see. There is no wind or moon. Only the silent bamboo poles punting the boat and making a shallow sound of water, rippling the long and lonely years. The dark red flowers are reflected in the turbid water, but they are terrifyingly clear. Song Jingyan's mind was sucked into the turbid water, and various images flashed in front of her eyes like a marquis, laughing, crying, lying in a pool of blood wearing white clothes, being swallowed alive by a raging fire. The woman in the image was her. But she was not her. The last woman who looked exactly like her was wearing a peach-red skirt and was drawing her eyebrows in front of a bronze mirror. She was crying while drawing her eyebrows. Then the scene froze. The pair of feet wearing exquisite embroidered shoes kicked off the bench under their feet and hung to death from the beam. A cruel and painful force came from her neck, and her neck seemed to be broken. As the woman died together, her soul trembled and floated out of the sky, watching in horror as her team disappeared by the Sunta River. I told you not to look at it. A gentle male voice pulled Song Jingyan's restless soul like a strong hand. The scene in front of her disappeared, leaving only the turbid river water. She was lightly patted on the back, and the wandering soul finally came back. She shook her head hard, and when she turned her head, she saw the white-faced man pinching his fingers and looking away, as if the calm and reassuring words just now did not come from his mouth. There are several bamboo rafts parked on the river. The color has faded into a simple yellow-brown after being soaked by the river water for many years. Without exception, there stood a man wearing a bamboo hat, gray clothes and gray trousers, and his whole body was so gray that it was indistinguishable from the color of the river. The obese man in official uniform in front of him stepped on the bamboo raft, and the river started to surge like crazy. The man couldn't stand firmly, and almost fell off the raft. Fortunately, he had quick hands and feet and lay firmly on the raft, grabbing the sides and yelling for help. There is no way to make it through, just this a moment. Song Jingyan stepped onto the bamboo raft and vaguely heard the white-faced man murmuring. She turned around, and his thin back drifted towards the way he came. The bamboo raft was long. She stood on the bamboo raft and looked down at the turbid river surface. There was a vague figure wearing a bamboo hat vaguely reflected on it. Apart from that, there was no other person. Sure enough, is he already dead? She wanted to reach out and hold up the turbid river water under the bamboo raft to take a closer look at herself, but she saw that the fat man in front of her was finally jolted down. His whole life was rotted into bones by the river water, and then sank into the dim river water. The color of the water instantly turned to blood due to the melting of flesh and blood, and all this happened in just the blink of an eye. Before he even had time to utter a syllable, the huge waves disappeared instantly and receded together with his sinking bones. It's hard to make the transition. She stared at the red shore getting farther and farther away, her voice trembling. Huangguan Road, Sunta River, ferryman. Ferry away the filthy world, but leave the pure and charming spirit behind. Seeing the fat man's flesh and blood turning into bones in an instant, Song Jingyan was frightened all the way and never dared to have any other thoughts. She crossed the Sunta River honestly, followed the team all the way across the Naya Bridge, viewed the Sanqing Stone, and climbed to the Wangxiang Tower. She completely hid the question of whether she was dead or not, and simply pretended to be a dead person while browsing the various copies of the underworld. Is my strategy goal to defeat the boss, King of Hell, with this group of unreliable ghost teammates? Song Jingyan rolled her eyes, still feeling that her idea was even more unreliable. After wandering in her mind, she once again realized that she had fallen behind, and hurriedly caught up with her short legs and lowered her head. It's you. Song Jingyan was stunned, but people with ostrich attributes always like to pretend they don't know anything. She continued to run forward very calmly, until the sound of running behind her got closer and closer, and she was grabbed by the collar and pulled back, and a big white face occupied her entire line of sight. Thanks to me waiting at the station for a long time, it's a good thing you gave me a break. Xiao Bai didn't ask you to wait for me at the terminal? Song Jingyan was confused and focused on keeping up with a large army. The sense of danger in completing the dungeon alone was rising. She always likes to pretend to be powerful, but is actually as timid as a mouse, so she swallowed her saliva carefully and stared at the white-faced ghost, daring not to speak. The white-faced ghost couldn't hold his breath and angrily grabbed her and pulled her back. Others are going to be reincarnated, but you are just a wisp of remnant soul running to death. It's good if you don't get scattered. Hurry up! Don't be so impatient. Why don't you walk so slowly if you don't have long legs? Chapter 2, A Hang Ghost, Part 2. The white-faced ghost just grabbed Song Jingyan and walked back all the way. The surrounding houses were unspeakably ugly. Of course, to say how ugly they were actually square pavilions and pavilions, but they were filled with an aura of death, creating the atmosphere of a huge cemetery. Song Jingyan was carried along and thrown in front of a black-faced ghost, while the white-faced ghost stood aside respectfully. Song Han is 16 years old. Those who hang themselves will not be reincarnated. Take her to the hell of wasted death. When the white-faced ghost heard this, he was stunned for a moment, but didn't say a word. Then he nodded, stretched out his hand, and dragged Song Jingyan out. Only then did Song Jingyan feel that something was wrong, and she opened her mouth and shouted, "Me? Did you just talk about me?" The black-faced ghost looked her up and down and narrowed his eyes slightly. "Aren't you Song Han?" "Of course I'm not." "Song Jingyan isn't you," the black-faced ghost said again. She was stunned and forgot to struggle. Song Jingyan is me." The black-faced ghost clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Song Han, courtesy named Jingyan, isn't it you?" Song Jingyan was completely confused now. She was not Song Han, but Song Jingyan was indeed her. She hesitated and defended. I'm not dead yet." "Who? Who hanged himself?" The black-faced ghost took 2 steps forward, looked at her carefully, then looked at the white-faced ghost with some doubts. The 2 of them looked at each other for a while, and then the black-faced man scratched his head in annoyance. "No! Why am I the one responsible for this mess again?" 1 person, 2 ghosts, oh no, 3 ghosts sat in a circle. During this period, they replenished the delicious Meng soup twice. The black-faced ghost finally explained the matter clearly. In the final analysis, Song Han and Song Jingyan were just the same person, but they were only one master once. Just like what the white-faced ghost said, Song Jingyan is just a small remnant soul, Song Han's remnant soul. In the previous reincarnation, a remnant of Song Han's soul slipped away, which is the current Song Jingyan. And after the poor Song Han committed suicide in despair, his soul was incomplete and escaped her to die in vain. The ghosts of hell rushed to reincarnate regardless of the situation, but were beaten to pieces because of the lack of soul. Therefore, Song Jingyan, who was happily alive, was naturally dragged down to the underworld as a remnant of a vassal. So, I have to go to the 6 realms to find all the souls of that stupid Song Han? What happens after I find them all? Do I have to find her? What's the reason? Song Jingyan had just finished drinking Meng soup and burped. She finally felt satisfied and satiated, but she was suddenly depressed by the black-faced man's words. Collecting 7 Dragon Balls can summon a dragon, and she started to yell angrily. The black-faced ghost said seriously, "Only when you have found them all can you be reincarnated." "Isn't that right? Once we are together, she and I will become the same person." "Theoretically, yes." Song Jingyan resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "If you don't look for it, I worked so hard to find her soul. After finding it all, I have to disappear and become her. I am the one who suffers, but she is the one who enjoys the blessing. Don't look for it. I won't look for it." The black-faced ghost was stunned for a moment. "Then you go to hell in vain instead of her." Song Jingyan gestured with her middle finger. "If you extend your head and shrink your head with a knife, do you need a knife?" The black-faced ghost thought about it carefully, and it seemed that Song Jingyan did not get any benefits at all, and instead rushed to return the consciousness that he finally had. It is not an easy task to go to the 6 realms to find the wandering remnant soul. It is really unreasonable not to promise some benefits. He dug into his arms for a long time and took out a small gourd the size of a finger. There is an unconscious soul in it. If you find Song Han and use the soul against yourself, then you'll have nothing to do with her anymore. This temptation is much stronger than reincarnation. No matter how useless her consciousness is, it is still her own. Song Han's suicidal temperament is just a loser. She doesn't want to become the same person as such a loser. Although when she scolded Song Han, she forgot that they were actually the same person. "Okay then, I'll look for it." The words were forced, but her hands were not slow at all. Song Jingyan took the small gourd and hid it in her arms, smiling and raising her eyebrows. Brother Blackface, tell me, where can I find it? The majestic bells sounded from the dense forest, and the green mountains soaked in white mist were quiet and elegant. The birds, frightened by the bells, flew out of the mountains and forests, dotting the blue sky with black ink like drops. The girl raised her head, staring at the group of birds with her dark eyes. A strand of black hair on her temples was blown by the wind, slightly adding a bit of popularity to her coldness that kept strangers away. The two men in green who were following the girl stared at her with admiration, their expressions slightly stiff, obviously too nervous. The girl retracted her gaze from staring at the ink dots in the sky and turned her head slightly. And Ling, take a good fortune pill and give it to Zhao Qi as a gift from the master. Annoyance suddenly appeared in Ling's eyes, but fortunately, he has always been good at controlling his emotions. When he spoke the next moment, his voice could no longer be heard to be reluctant, only a little confused. Master, although junior brother Zhao Qi was appointed by Elder Pingliang to go, Master has trained him for nearly 100 years, and he can just leave as soon as he says so. Why do you still want to give him the good fortune pill? However, the girl did not answer, and Ling also knew that he had talked too much, so he said no more and quietly withdrew. The wind became stronger and stronger, and the girl's long black hair was swept back by the wind, and even strands of it swept over the chest of the young man behind her. The young man couldn't help but his heart beat a little faster, and his throat felt a little tight. Dongrong, let's go. The girl spoke softly. Her clear voice was somewhat broken by the wind, and it was ethereal and a little nihilistic. The man behind her did not answer, her gentle and slender eyebrows slightly raised, obviously displeased. She turned back slightly annoyed, but froze when she saw the young man clearly. The disappointment on the young man's face could not be concealed. He lowered his eyes, and there was no emotion in his voice. Master, I am Nge. The girl looked at Nge blankly, and she did not change her gaze for a long time. It took so long that the bell sounded again, and the birds' chirping was sharp and long. It took so long that her eyes turned slightly red, and she finally turned around without saying a word. The rest of the road seemed to be deprived of all sounds. The two silent people had their own thoughts in their hearts, either sighing or being quiet, and no one spoke again. Song Jingyan, no. To be precise, her name should be Song Jin now, Song Han's first reincarnation. There are always regrets in a person's life, and it must be because of the unforgettable regret that Song Han's soul was broken up and turned into a wandering spirit that returned to the world where he lived before and refused to leave. Unfortunately, Song Jingyan could not know from the black-faced ghost what Song Han's regrets were in each life, so she had to turn herself into every Song Han to dig out, smooth out the regrets, and eliminate obsessions. Chapter 3 The Master Coveted by the Evil Disciple 1. Outside the window, everything is pink. The delicate peach blossoms fall on the branches, making a sound of spring. From a distance, you can see the dense peach-pink clouds, which are particularly bright and beautiful. Green bamboos are half hidden and half revealed in the thick mist surrounding the bamboo house. Birds with crispy yellow and emerald green bodies were hiding on the peach branches and chirping, then suddenly flapped their wings and flew away. Song Jingyan sat quietly in front of the desk, slowly flipping through the slightly yellowed pages. It took her 4 or 5 days to gradually sort out Song Jin's life story, personality, characteristics, and emotional trends. It's not that she is passive and sabotaging, it's just that she doesn't know how to eliminate Song Jin's obsession. One step after another, Song Jin, who finally embarked on the road of bloodshed and becoming a demon, had 2 complicated thoughts in her heart. Song Jin, at a young age of more than 200 years, is able to stand on an equal footing with her predecessors who have been cultivating immortals for thousands of years. Her immortal bones are uniquely qualified. Although he is still young, everyone respects him as Song Xianzuan. He has hundreds of disciples, but most of them are registered disciples. There is only one direct disciple, named Hu Dongrong. Hu Dongrong is only 7 years younger than Song Jin. He was a boy who was rescued from a plague village, where corpses were everywhere when Songzhen was 20 years old. A young man who was raised by one hand, and the only disciple who taught him his cultivation from scratch. When Songzhen sadly found out that she fell in love with this disciple whom she got along with every day, her pride and worldly ethics restrained her emotions, so that she could only suppress the emotions that made her panic and pretend to be cold. She is a miserable woman and a hateful woman, if only from the perspective of her secret admiration for her disciple Huidongrong. She is indeed worthy of sympathy. But who is Songzhen? She had never experienced such a terrible and uncontrollable emotion since she was a child, so she vented her anger on the innocent Huidongrong, making many sarcastic remarks. She could be forgiven for the endless difficulties and the task of being harsh every day, but in the end, it was she who killed Huidongrong with her own hands. She didn't want to face it anymore, so she destroyed it directly. It was so selfish and terrible. If Huidongrong was just an ordinary immortal cultivator, even if he was her own disciple, even if she killed him with her own hands, it wouldn't be a big deal. At most, Songzhen would have an inner demon. Unfortunately, Huidongrong did not die. In order to disguise the fact that Huidongrong was not killed by herself, she deliberately chose the place where Huidongrong's bones were buried in the territory of the demon clan. Huidongrong's soul was infiltrated by demonic energy, and he gradually built his body by devouring demons, cultivating immortals or demons in a matter of seconds. Then there was the former master and apprentice, and today's mortal enemy, and the endless struggle lasted for decades. I don't know whether the two of them still have a nostalgia for the past in their hearts, or whether they have really met their opponents. The decades of fighting have only added scars to the two of them, and there is no life or death event. This war started out as a confrontation between the entire world of cultivators and Huidongrong. It was not until the fact that Songzhen personally killed his disciples was revealed that Songzhen, who was in a high position, was dragged down from the clouds and criticized by thousands of people, and was despised by the world. Songzhen enjoyed the admiration of the world and never felt grateful, but when she was rejected by the world, she resented it. More than 200 years of pride ruined her. She was once noble, and now she is low. She slaughtered one city after another, covered in blood, and almost became a demon. Probably all cause and effect started from the first life. Even if Songhan didn't make any big mistakes in his subsequent lives, he still didn't end well because the sins Songzhen committed were too deep. The souls carrying the blood of countless souls should pay for it with pain and death for eternity. Song Jingyan closed the book. Then, what exactly is Songzhen's regret? She had a headache. For a person like Songzhen, what is there that she should regret so much that even after so many reincarnations, she still can't get rid of it, turning her regrets into obsessions? Regret to kill Huidongrong? She liked her disciple so much, but in the end she fell in love with him and killed him. This should be her biggest regret. But Song Jingyan was not sure. Songzhen had always been selfish. Who else knew what she regretted except herself? Besides, when Song Jingyan penetrated this body, she had already killed Huidongrong and buried him for a long time. What could she do if she regretted it? Could it be possible to dig out Huidongrong and revive him? Ah, I have a headache. Song Jingyan couldn't help but hold her head that was about to explode with both hands and whispered softly, shaking her head slightly. Why is the first life so difficult? She rubbed her temples. If the black-faced ghost had asked her to go back to the days before killing Huidongrong, she would have ended the marriage without killing Huidongrong. There would not have been so much bloodshed in the future, which gave her a headache just thinking about it. She reached out and wanted to pour a cup of tea to calm down, but the teapot was already empty. Master. Song Jingyan turned her head and met N'Ji's clear eyes. He first came in quietly with a teapot, then put the teapot on the desk and took a step back, bowing respectfully. Disciple heard that Master has been suffering from headaches recently, so he prepared licha, which is refreshing and nourishing. Master, would you like to try it? Damn it, here we go again. Song Jingyan felt a headache getting more and more. The disciple named Nge had the words, "I adore Master," written in his eyes. He pretended to be well-behaved and sensible, which made it difficult for her to refuse. Originally, Hudongrung's matter was enough to give her a headache, but now she was sitting on pins and needles, wanting to scold this little kid. No matter how you say Song Zhen is your elder, please kill your admiration for her. It doesn't matter whether it's big or small. Song Jingyan desperately wanted to get angry, but she couldn't go against Song Zhen's character, so she only raised her eyes slightly, not even looking at the registered disciple. She held the book with her slender fingers and gently motioned for him to step back with her other hand, etc. Song Jingyan suddenly figured out that Song Zhen's regret was definitely Hudongrong. Why did the black-faced ghost send her here at such a deceptive moment? It showed that her attempt to prevent the killing of Hudongrong was absolutely not allowed. Only after this incident happened, she could still do something to stop Hudongrong from fighting with her for many years and bloodbathed many human cities. This would truly eliminate her obsession. But Song Zhen has already killed and buried Hudongrong. How can such a huge hatred be dismissed? Hudongrong is not a fuel-efficient lamp. After returning from cultivating demons, he encounters gods and demons and kills demons. He never considers the word humanity. Even if the master and apprentice have been together for 200 years, if they are killed by the person closest to them and their bodies are thrown into the wilderness, everyone will feel heartbroken and hold a grudge. Besides, Hudongrong didn't know why he died. He simply refused to die in peace. If he knew that Song Zhen died because he was unable to love, maybe he would be a little bit more moved. Talent? Weird! If she was secretly loved by someone and was killed and silenced by that person, Song Jingyan didn't think she could forgive that person at all. Chapter for the Master Coveted by the Evil Disciple. 2. Song Jingyan suffered from insomnia. Therefore, Song Xianzuan, who is cold and unparalleled in the world, had a pair of shallow dark circles under his eyes and tried hard to hold back a yawn that made his eyes red. In fact, they have cultivated to the point where Song Zhen is unparalleled in the world, and the needs of ordinary people such as eating and sleeping are no longer a problem. However, this sojourning soul is so hopeless that he cannot skip 3 meals a day. If he doesn't sleep for a day, he will feel sleepy all day long. Just like the current situation, Enling immediately felt that his master was looking particularly haggard today. He followed Song Jingyan carefully, but couldn't help but secretly look at her face. The reddish eyes completely overturned her usual cold appearance, making her look like an aggrieved rabbit. TSK. Master, what on earth is going on? Enling thought that it might be the cold-eyed behavior of junior brother Zhao Qi that made the master feel chilled, but then he thought that the master shouldn't take it to heart about someone like Zhao Qi. Just when he was about to extend his suspicion to Nge, he heard the master's voice soft and trembling slightly. Enling heard it clearly. Dongrong, Hudongrong again. His eyes darkened, and he felt uncomfortable in his heart. Hudongrong has been dead for nearly half a year, and Master still can't forget him. She still called his name softly as before, and she still couldn't sleep at night when she thought of him, with her eyes slightly red. Enling envied Hudongrong very much. Almost every disciple who had spent time with the master admired her, but Hudongrong was the only one who was special to the master. Even after he died, he still lived in the master's heart. Enling thought like this, but Song Jingyan bit her lip in embarrassment. Damn it! I spent the whole night thinking about how to deal with Hudongrong, but today I couldn't stop jumping out when I said these 2 words. Did the kid behind you hear it? What would he think? Is he as emotional as that little kid Nge? I have a headache. I really have a headache. However, the headache could only make it continue to be a headache. The person she hurriedly brought Enling to visit early in the morning was an important character. Kong Yang, 2,000 years old, senior brother Song Zhen. Considering that Hudongrong, who returned from hell, is really terrifying, Song Jingyan is not the rightful owner of this body.